Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. You're watching the In Deep on the Delta Fishing Report for the week of April 8th. I'd like to start off by just thanking everyone who's been sending the reports weekly. I really appreciate it. It's really helping me to formulate what's going on out here and pass the information on to the rest of the viewers out here. And you know, I always try to let you guys know what's going on with some of the recent tournaments. And I think it gets a little bit frustrating to some people when I talk about, man, it took 30 pounds or 35 pounds to win a tournament, and you go out there and you wonder why I'm not getting 35 pounds. The average guy isn't doing that out here, and I can tell you, I mean, I'm getting dozens and dozens of reports. I talk to dozens of people throughout the week, and the average guy just doesn't get that 30 to 35 pounds. So don't get down on yourself when you're not picking up those tournament winning weights. I'd also like to thank all the people that have taken a few minutes out of their day to stop and talk to me, either at the ramp or out here on the water. I really appreciate you guys coming around. It's been fun talking to you guys and getting to know some of you guys. So thanks for taking a minute out of your day to say hi to me when you see me on the water. What's next? Let's get right into the report. We'll start with stripers, and I'd like to welcome a new contributor to the show, and it's Jeff Suhu from Suhu Sport Fishing. Now, Jeff is a full-time striper guide out of Oakley, and I will be talking with Jeff weekly, and he will be giving input on what's going on with the stripers. Just remember, the striper report is going to be a very small portion of the show. We're going to focus on largemouth bass, but starting next week, I'll have a little more information for you guys that are really interested in stripers. So this bite has not been as solid as it was 2 weeks ago. This week it has slowed down. They're still picking them up, trolling. Maybe some good information is there's a lot more fish that are being caught on top water. So if you can get out there and find a congregation of fish, you might have a lot of fun getting them on top waters. It seems as if the fish that are in Sassoon Bay and Honker and all those the bays, when they're coming through, they're moving through the West Delta pretty quick. Quickly. They're either going up the Sacramento River or they're kind of bypassing, coming through Pittsburgh and the Big Break area and getting into the Central Delta. So most of the fish have been caught in the Central Delta. If you're coming out, stick in the Central Delta, and unless you got some fish going for you out west, stay in the central part of the Delta. And that's my striper report. Next week we'll try to get a little more information from Jeff, and we'll have a little more comprehensive striper report. Let's get into the largemouth bass. I want to get into water conditions. First of all, a lot less pressure this week on the Delta, so that has meant the clarity has improved. During the start of the week we had a lot of wind, and it did roll up the water a little bit, but we had the Bbt Tournament on Saturday. People that were out Sunday said they were pleasantly surprised at very low pressure. I've been out Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's been really light pressure. Now, with that, the water clarity where I have been fishing in the North Delta has been improved to about 6, 7, 8 feet, which I really don't like, especially during the spawn. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Now, I've got reports from down south that it's more like 3 to 5 feet of visibility, and there is some stained water. If you can find it, fish that stained water. The guys that have been fishing the 2 to 3 feet of water clarity have been doing better than what the fellas have been fishing the really clear water. So that's the clarity report. Temperatures, as you can imagine, are going up nicely. I'm seeing anywhere from 63 to 65, even 66 midday. If you guys are coming out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you may be seeing 65 to maybe even 68 degree temperatures, and that's getting to just prime water temperature for the largemouth bass out here. I will say one thing. With that temperature, a lot of the fish are coming in spawning. They're either in full pre-spawn or they're uptight looking to spawn, or some fish are already spawning. With the water clarity, I am finding this year that most of the fish that I see spawning are out in 5 or 6 feet of water. They're not in that 2 to 3 feet of water where we usually see a lot of action. Now, maybe in areas that I haven't been in, you guys may be seeing some fish in real shallow water. But if you're out here, make sure you really stay in that, let's just say 5 to 8 feet of water, and really focus down there. Some of the fish that I've been seeing are really hard to see. You'll see a light spot, and all of a sudden, when it's too late, you'll see a fish move out of there, and you, darn, I should have been watching that a little closer. I just spooked that fish. Now, that happens, at least you know the fish is there. You can turn around and come back, let them get on the bed. But the fish seem to be spawning in a little deeper water. Tournament talk. Bbt had a tournament last week. It took 35 pounds to win. It took 19 pounds to cash a check, and with that information, you would think the fishing is just on fire out here, but that is not so. Everyone, literally, not everyone, but I'll say 95% of the people that I've talked to and the correspondence that I've gotten has been slow. That's also what I've been finding. I've been catching fish, but it is slow, and you have to work for every darn fish out here. And I'm going to give you guys a few tips on what I've been doing to increase my catch rate. And my catch rate hasn't been great. I'm not pulling in 25 or 30 pound bags. I'm looking around. I'm going to be fishing a tournament here in a couple of weeks, and boy, I'm hoping I get on a better pattern than I am now. Catching fish, but it has been slow. With that being said, the baits that are happening out here, if you're just trying to catch fish, a worm. Either fish at Wacky, Nico, or drop shot, and that's going to be your key to having action. And those worms will catch big fish. If you're tournament style fishing, punching is the way to go. A lot of the big fish are coming on punching or chatterbaits, or there is a topwater bite coming on. And the topwater bite is not quick, but they're bigger fish. So if you're out here this weekend and we start getting that 68, 69, 70 degree temperatures in the next week or so, I think the topwater bite's really going to come on. The common guy that's out here, they've had really tough fishing. Everyone's fishing is on an upsweep. I mean, they're getting more fish than they were a month ago, but for the time of year it is and the reports that are coming in on the tournaments, everyone's just, the weekend anglers are a little disappointed because they're not coming out and catching these big bags. And all I could say to that is, you know, keep coming out here. If you can spend a little longer day out here, the bite is not quite as tide dependent as it was, say, a couple of weeks ago. It's still that high outgoing tide has been the best tide to catch most of your fish, but I think it's just as important to put in a little more time and move around and find that one sweet spot in the day where you get on the right bank and the fish are biting. I know a lot of times in the last few weeks when I've only been fishing 4 or 5 hours a day, I feel like I was always a day late or $1 short. I left at noon, the bite started at 2, or I came out at 2 and the bite was in the morning. So if you can put a little more time in on the water, that will help you. The other thing that, let's talk about what I've been doing, and I want to tell you a mistake that I've made, and I don't want you guys to make the mistake, because I've lost a couple of big fish out here this week, and it's been heartbreaking. When I was guiding, when it came to knots, I always told people, you tie them, you test them, and then you trust them. And trusting them is really important. But what I've been doing is I've been babying the fish. I have not been setting the hook hard enough. The first big fish I lost was because I was in poor position to set the hook and I didn't get a good hook set on him. And the fish, basically I rolled him, saw a nice 5 or 6 pound fish, and had him on for a second and he got off, and I knew I just didn't set the hook. The second fish that I had was on a worm, and I didn't set the hook because I was babying my knot. I had caught several fish on that rod. I knew that the leader might have been a little bit damaged. I didn't change out the leader on it. I hadn't changed the knot in about a week, and I was babying the knot. And I set the hook hard enough to load the fish up, and I had him on for just long enough for that fish to take a couple of big head shakes, and then he got off. If I would have been diligent and changed my leader, maybe even just cut off the last couple inches, retied the hook on there, I was fishing a worm, I would have had a little more confidence in when I got that good bite and I knew it was a big fish, and when that rod loaded up, I would have really smashed him and I probably would have caught that fish. So just remember, make sure you're changing out your leaders and your knots are good. The tip of your leader down by the business end of your hook, if you got to change that out, cut it off a few inches at a time, go ahead and do that so that you have confidence to really set the hook. It's really important this time of year. So I finally got home. I pinched myself. I said, Steve, you got to change what you're doing. So what I did was I went home, switched out all of my leaders, and I extended the leaders because I have been fishing in clear water. If I'm fishing in 6 or 8 feet of water, I like to have a 6 or 8 foot leader. If I'm fishing in 4 feet of water, I'll have a 4 feet leader, so 4 foot of leader. So I generally have 55-pound braid. I jumped up to 20-pound test maxima. I also set up a couple of rods with 20-pound fluoro, and I think that has helped me get a few more bites because of the clear water. So with that, I went out, and the day after I switched all of my leaders out, I was lucky enough to get another big bite, and I'll show you the picture of that big bite right now. That was my first double digit of the year, and I was so happy when that I had changed out my leaders because I had confidence. And when that fish grabbed it, and I caught it off of a bed, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I caught it on a white robo worm. When I saw this worm disappear down at about 6 feet, I set the hook hard, and the fish was there, and everything from there went according to plan. But if I would have had that situation a couple of days earlier, I may not have set that hook like I did after knowing that I had everything set up, re-rigged and everything. So that fish was spawning in about 6 or 7 feet of water. It was very hard to see, and it was one of those things where you just see a big hog down there and you think it's a log, and then it moves. I had to work on the fish for about 45 minutes. I couldn't get him to take anything. I put on the white worm because it was something that I could see, and when it dropped down there and I can barely see the worm, I knew the fish was there. And when I saw the worm disappear, just kind of standard operating procedures, I set the hook, and that's what I got the worm on. So extend your leaders, and also extend your cast because of the fish are boat shy. Make sure you're covering not only the 2 to 3 feet of water that you usually see them spawn in, but also I'll say 6 to 8 feet of water, because the fish are spawning out a little bit deeper. Now here's another tip that I'm going to give you. I've been fishing worms, and I've been fishing them slow. Water. I am getting a reaction bite on worms. I'm fishing them super slow, and I'm catching fish super slow, but I'm also getting a reaction bite if I'm fishing them slow, and then I jump the worm or pop it, and that's creating a reaction bite for the worms. Now, what I wanted to do is if you guys aren't trying this method, you might want to give it a try. I've been using a lot of wacky worms, but when we get into heavy vegetation, they tend to foul up a lot. So I'm using an unweighted Yamamoto cut-tail worm, and the way that I rigged that up, you can see where my hook is here. I am pulling the worm up onto the line, and this is doing two things for me. And the way that you do that is simply, let me get this thing out, and I'll rig it up for you real quick if you guys aren't familiar with this type of rig here. So I'm using an inline hook, 20-pound, this has the fluoro on it, 20-pound leader, about 6 feet to 55-pound braid. So instead of just doing the normal rigging where you hook it up like this, just enough to get in the keeper section, I'm going to pull about 1 inch or 1.5 inches of this worm onto the hook, pull it through, and run this up on the line. Let's get this up here. Tearing up the worm a little bit. You guys will see what I'm doing here. So I'm pulling it up to the hook keeper there, and then I'm rigging it just standard wacky style. So it's not, or excuse me, standard inline style. So it's nice and straight. This does two things for me. It allows me to fish heavy vegetation and pull this worm through there without it hanging up. And it also puts the hook back farther in the worm. So now if a big fish is on its bed and it's going to grab the worm by the back of it, hopefully if it grabs it in the middle, it'll have the hook in there. When the hook is far up here, way up to the top, if they're grabbing it by the tail or in the middle, they'll swim off with it and you can't set the hook. So give that a try and see what happens. With that, that is the report. Again, worms for numbers of fish, chatterbaits and punching for bigger fish, along with starting some top waters, and that should be your key to success for the next week or so. As the water temperature starts to hit about 68 to 70, look for the top water bite to start up a little bit. So with that being said, again, thank you guys for sending in your reports. Please, if you haven't sent me a report, it doesn't have to be a long report. Just, hey, I was out for 6 hours, I caught 5 fish, the fishing was slow. That's all you need. If you want to add something about the baits or how you caught them, that's great too. But just a very short report, that's going to help me put out the word on what the average guy is catching. So thank you guys for watching. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, and we're going to see you guys out hopefully at the report next week, and I hope to see you guys on the water. Thanks for watching and good luck on your next trip.